an Aaron Rodgers story to tell, and it's not one that you're going to see, hear, or read anywhere else. And there's a reason for that. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also cover two other teams in town, Penguins and Pirates. Hope you can check those out as well. It was another long practice yesterday out at St. Vincent College, running about, I'd say, 15, 20 minutes longer than usual. Might not sound like much to you, but I get the sense it is to the athletes. They're feeling it. They get a little bit edgy. Tempers can flare. There was one incident about halfway through this session yesterday in which everybody started pushing and shoving. Not too much came of it, but it's wired. So near the end of this one, I happen to be standing in what I'll refer to as the far end zone, and not the one where we do the interviews, but all the way at the other end. If you're in the Chuck Noll Field bleachers, that would be the end zone to your left. And it's pretty much just me and Terrell Austin down there. Austin wanting to take advantage of the same view to see how his defensive guys were about to fare in a 7-on-7 set of drills. Aaron Rodgers, because he never takes anything off, it seems, is the quarterback. And within the first couple of these snaps, Rodgers tries to hit Roman Wilson on a crossing route within the end zone. Wilson, to his credit, gets enough of a step on Brandon Eccles that Eccles is moved to, cheat a little bit. That happens a lot in these camp settings, which, by the way, is another reason the defense is always ahead of the offense. Eccles tugs, the route's thrown off, and then Eccles is able to get the back of his right hand on the pass that Rodgers threw. No big deal, just a drill. Austin jokes that it would have been defensive pass interference in a game anyway, and actually he's not really joking, it would have been. And Eccles proceeds to do something he's done a lot of in this camp. In addition to being good, he's been really feisty, really pushy and shovey, and also really mouthy. Now, regardless of who started what, he and Wilson are walking back toward the line of scrimmage. Eccles following him, even though he doesn't need to be there. And Eccles, who's now facing away from me so I can't hear what he's saying, says something that pretty clearly triggers Rodgers a bit. And Rodgers, who is facing in my direction and can be heard not just by me, but also by the 200 or so people on the grass hillside behind me, shouts to Eccles, "Don't talk to my player, talk to me." There's a little bit more of a back and forth that I can't make out. But as they're talking, I'm thinking to myself, these guys were teammates with the other Jets. And Rodgers continues, "I love you, but don't talk to my player." At which point, unsurprisingly, everything stopped. Everybody just went back to business. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense. Eccles can mouth off at Wilson and Calvin Austin, maybe even DK Metcalf, depending on the mood. But he's in a spot there where it's him and the 4-time MVP / 21st season first ballot Hall of Famer guy. And the entire situation just goes like it never happened. Now, I spoke with Eccles afterward. Big smile through the whole conversation, including when I brought up Rodgers snapping at him. He's loving this. He thinks this is awesome. He sees this as a return to who he was before recent years in New Jersey that got him down. He sees this overall scenario where the Steelers have a bunch of these guys, notably Jalen Ramsey, one of the sport's premier trash talkers, and he loves the idea of fitting in. So take that as a happy sidebar from this. Eccles has been one of the more pleasant surprises of this camp for me. But Rodgers doing what he did there, and on top of that, speaking earlier in the day with reporters about Roman Wilson and about how Wilson needs to get out of his own head and just be comfortable with who he is, rather than, according to Rodgers, trying to please Rodgers or trying to please the coaches. And Wilson did, in fact, have a better day than the norm. I brought up with you guys over this summer a time or two or 200 that my single greatest concern about the Steelers' pursuit of Rodgers was that we couldn't have had any idea the extent to which he'd be invested in another NFL season for himself, let alone becoming part of something bigger here in Pittsburgh when he had no prior attachment. Well, if I could condense everything that I've seen from Rodgers this summer that I've appreciated between minicamp and now training camp that have me convinced that my previous concerns were unwarranted, it would have been this. It would have been this. Because when you're doing stuff like this, you're not just the quarterback. You're not just the offensive captain. You're leading the whole thing. And man, that's impressive to pull off in about a month's time. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar. Today's J1Q comes from David, who says, DK, I haven't heard you say anything about Beanie Bishop. Is he even playing? Sure would be nice to hear more about players who are trying to make the team. Well, Beanie happened to make a really nice pass breakup early in the practice on a 7 shots with a little bit of a verbal assistance from Juan Thornhill, who shouted out his way what to do. But truth be told, that happens in actual football. So I wouldn't take any credit away from Beanie on that front. He's been fine. There hasn't been that much to say about him in one direction or the other. What has happened, though, is that you've seen with the addition of Jalen Ramsey and the implementation of this coverage people concept that Mike Tomlin has focused on 3 corners, regardless of inside or outside. And on top of that, as I just mentioned in the opening segment, Brandon Echols has really taken a step upward to the point that whatever alignment happens to take the field, I'm not talking obviously about Jacksonville or anything preseason related. I'm talking about when the season gets going, you're going to have not 3, but 4 corners intensely involved in this defense. Most of it will be in coverage. Some of it will be in whatever it is that they have in mind for Ramsey, and to a lesser extent Porter, who has somewhat strikingly spent some of this camp up near the line of scrimmage and even pursuing. Can Beanie become a factor in that? Sure. Has Beanie, what's the term I'm looking for here, scratched and clawed to make that happen? Yeah, but it hasn't yet. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll start doing that in the preseason games. He is exactly the type of guy who's going to play a lot in those. And within that, he's also exactly the type of guy to embrace all that action. So I don't know, David, from the tone of your question, unless I misread it, I think you're making it sound like he's been written off, and that's just not the case. You need depth at corner. You also need corners who can contribute on special teams. Beanie's been a significant contributor to special teams, and the experience that he gained, as well as the interceptions that he had last season, those all bode well for him to continue to play a role like that. Probably not to the extent that he did last season when he was able to earn 6 starts and ring up 28 tackles and those 4 interceptions. But look, Beanie's 25. He's not going anywhere. He'll be around. There's nothing to dislike about Beanie, certainly not anything about his attitude or his approach. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. Don't forget, we're going to have another double shot of Steelers this afternoon as I'll be back out in Latrobe with Chris Halleck. We'll team up after the practice, after the final practice of Jacksonville week, and whip up a real nice video program for you that'll be online at around 5:30-ish. That way we can get all the latest information from you. We can talk to some of the people coming off the field afterward and include that as well. Hope to see you then.